There she blows.
She being a 12th century church standing beside a Tudor hall with a beautiful 17th century gatehouse, which we'll see later. The oldest parts of the church building are early medieval.
As I'm swallowed by the porch.
The tower which we're about to see is an addition of the 15th century.
Well, welcome to St Nonna's in Bradstone,
which is located southeast of Launceston in Devon.
Nonna's quite a curious name to me because my son's grandmother calls herself Nonna, which is Italian for grandma. Now I already know this place is open because we had our lunch and had a little look inside.
We're about to see some wooden bosses in the ceiling.
Now I think aspects of this porch are probably among the oldest bit of it. There's some detailing here, which you can see in the stonework is quite faded. So that would seem to indicate that the porch was a later addition. There are lovely wood carvings at the junctions of the wood in the roof, which I find really interesting. And there's a similar approach inside the building.
Such as this, and this too. Ornate embellishments of the woodwork.
As we'll see when we get inside. It's interesting in the porch to see the figure that appears to have his tongue sticking out, as though he's mocking those who would enter. It is almost like gargoyles that you get in the towers overlooking the church. Let's have a look at the exterior.
The church was dedicated to Bishop Brunscombe in 1261. It is built of stone rubble with ashlar dressings beneath a slate roof.
Thank you, bird, for your beautiful song. I think he said you're welcome.
Here we approach the West Tower doorway.
My wife pointed out the ironwork on this doorway below the tower and the ironwork on it. I feel by touching it, rusty though it is, and I'm touching the hand of the man who made it. Of course, nowadays it might be a woman who makes it, but it most certainly was a man back then. A door that's been filled in.
Like a cavity in the tooth of God. Ever nosy, I can't resist looking inside.
Peering into the exterior. It's so light in there, I've actually got a reasonable view of it too. And the quite simple views.
Like many Conservation Trust churches, St Nonna's is furnished sparingly, which really lets you see and appreciate the bones of the building. As I clump my way around the exterior of the church, I can't help but ponder. The location of St Nonna's Church is idyllic.
I think that Robin just said if you'd like to like and subscribe to this channel, we would be most grateful.
There are few memorials, but it is worth looking for the poignant wall monument to Lance Corporal William Lovell, killed in action in France in 1917. Also, outside the porch, affixed to the south wall of the tower, is a worn granite slab to a local man who died in 1604. Of course, I forgot to look at either. What a satisfying resonant thump that was. The interior features a wagon roof with carved bosses. Near the south porch is the font, fairly plain, on a hexagonal base.
This church was consecrated in the year 1261. There were aspects of the porch that seemed quite old and quite weathered, as though they had been on the exterior before the porch was added.
Towards the bell tower is an interesting article to do with the hazards of bell ringing. It was quite lengthy, so I guess the hazards are many. Maybe a caution not to play with your ding-a-ling.
The sun arrives. It's quite reverberant in here. The windows got a lattice network. They're quite simple, really. Lovely aspect of light coming in through the windows.
On the right-hand side of the altar, you can just make out the remains of a medieval wall painting. One striking feature is a carved head affixed to the south wall of the chancel. Presumably the head was used as a corbel to support roof timbers, but now it stands on its own with an open mouth and eyes closed.
Large keys, maybe spares for the door. This looks Victorian to me, as much as I'm able to judge. Edwardian, 1924.
Probably because of its remoteness, this church is no longer used for regular worship and is preserved by the Churches Conservation Church. It really is a lovely, bright, simple space to worship. An old building with fresh flowers in it is always welcome.
Please do not touch.
More glances at the roof bosses. I very much like the Spartan simplicity of the place. The beautiful, subtle traceries around the simple windows. This seems to reflect a simple, unadorned faith, with directness to God, rather than one embellished with gold. And I speak this as one from a non-religious perspective, an appreciator of all things made with love. Even that purposeful but hideous electric box. Perhaps pause for a moment to meditate on Quasimodo. If you didn't laugh at that, am I showing myself the door? My son, who is home educated, is not particularly interested in churches, but is rather like being caught in the rain. You cannot help but get wet.
Are these the keys to living life?
Even when the varnish of your soul is withering, is it possible to put aside anger and not be cross?
Find the answer in yourself. They're very faded, but there are some wall paintings here.
The medieval ones that we saw briefly earlier.
We're going to move on to another church now, see if we can fit that in.
Or are we?
Some interesting gravestones that we noted as we made our way through the graveyard.
I'm trying to include some of these in the videos because I know some of you enjoy them.
Beautifully crafted.
Let us glance back at the church.
A beautiful blue sky today, and it's only February. I just thought before I left the church, I thought I'd show you this house, which is opposite, or even juxtaposed to the church. It has a very interesting roof, I think.
It's the 17th century gatehouse.
Quite a playful design from the architect. Well, thank you for joining me on this journey, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.
And as we make our way back to the car, I wish you all a beautiful journey through your own lives, idyllic as the countryside is here. Well, maybe this is the least idyllic bit of the journey. However, a few parting thoughts that I had in mind as I left.
A silhouette of life and the shadows that accompany it. Every step we take in the light.